To those people who found out the parent had a second secret family, how did you discover the truth? What happened afterwards? Kinda the opposite. My bio dad has, as far as I know, kept me a secret from the rest of his family for 23 years. Pretty sure I have 3 half-siblings who are all 10 to 20 plus years older than me. It's kinda wild when I think about it, but I typically don't. My cousin's dad, my uncle by marriage, had a secret family. He worked in Houston during the week and came home to the family in Harlingen, TX on the weekend. It was kind of always a family joke between my cousins and her siblings. You know, like, wouldn't it be funny if dad actually had a secret family and that's why he's never here? Then they found out it was true. A wife and 3 kids. Just like my cousin. Very similar ages. The 2 families had almost identical lives. My uncle had been married the whole time to both my aunt and this other lady. Everyone thought it was some sick joke when they found out. But nope. After my parents' 10th year anniversary church wedding, someone called the church registrar saying that she was the legal wife. The secretary from the registrar proceeded to call my mom to inform her about it. My mom did investigations on her own a full week after the event, and eventually found out that my dad now has a daughter with his mistress, and has been staying with them 5 days in a week. His excuse was always work is hectic, so I might as well stay at someone's place. Yeah right lol. Mom decided to break the relationship. Annulment is expensive from where we live. Divorce is being discussed in the Supreme Court. And the whole family was in chaos. Grandparents' father's side wanted custody of 4 of us, me and my 3 brothers. But we fought till they gave up because we saw how distraught our mom was and she only had us for support. Our aunt and grandma were living a bit far from where we were. They had a final meeting, asking why my dad decided to cheat for the nth time. He said, because I am a weak man and you are too trusting, so I decided to cheat on you again. A few years later he decided to take away our educational plans and life savings because of gambling addiction. His parents were holding it for us that time because brothers and I were still minors. He forged their signatures and was able to encash all of it. So, yeah, 15 years after that, we barely have contact with him, but we know he has a new family again. We actually saw him again during my second brother's funeral 2 years ago. Didn't communicate as much. Mom is doing okay. Brothers and I are doing okay. Just have terrible trust issues. This happened to my wife's grandmother. She's still alive in her 90s and her father had a secret second family. They met at his funeral. When the secret wife saw the life this man had built and lived with his public wife, the secret wife said, "I always knew there was someone else, but I didn't know that I was the someone else." Well, my wife has recently found out she has at least 8 half-siblings. Apparently another sibling did a 23andMe test and made her results public or something. One of the unknown half-siblings had done the same. And voila! This happened to my best friend's mom. This is interesting, as they were the secret family. My best friend's father passed away when he was young. His mother, who owned a business at the time, was raising her 2 kids a year apart. While they weren't struggling, her business was unable to grow since she had to pay herself so much to keep care of the kids. A few years later she runs into her high school sweetheart, and they re-establish connection and eventually start dating. He has 2 kids, near the same age as both of hers. His wife had passed away a year prior, and he works as a regional manager for a very large, very profitable company, so he was rich and sad. He eventually helped them buy a house under her name, which was previously owned by an average-paid NFL player, with bedrooms for both set of kids. He bought her a boat. He bought her a car. You name it. With his purchases, she was able to reinvest capital into her business and it took off fairly well. 2 or 3 years go by, and she's able to afford much nicer things by herself. Around junior year of my friend's HS, around 3 years, things got even more serious and she starts asking to get married. My friend's sister viewed him as her dad. Practically. Never called him that, though. I jokingly called them mom and dad because I spent a good deal of the summer at their house. She knew about his 2 kids, but the 2 kids did not know about them. However, after 3 years he still had never told his kids about his secret family. He explained to them that he was traveling, even during week-long cruises. This continued for another 2 years despite her nagging. He justified as saying he wanted all the kids to graduate high school. This past Christmas, after 5 years, everyone had graduated high school. My friend's mom had had enough. She dug into his friends' lives and they eventually told her that he was still married. His wife was still alive. My friend's mom kept her house and several other things he had bought under her and her kids' name. Her business is now in a great spot and easily provides for her kids' college. This man had 2 full families and spoiled both of them rotten, and kept it a secret for 5 years. I'm still pissed. This happened to my wife's friend. The father was a fireman and his 2 daughters lived down the block. It turns out he had a second family, also with 2 daughters a few blocks away. The second woman knew he had a wife and kids, but they never told their daughters. The fireman did one of those safety talks in school and gave a hug to one of the daughters from the second family before he left. My wife's friend witnessed her father hugging a girl in another class and asked about it at dinner. Things went downhill from there. My mother had me and my brother before she knew my father had a real family, so technically, we were the secret family, but we have a pretty good relationship with him despite that. Then a week ago, my mother and I visited the college I'll be attending this fall. In the middle of the 2-hour trip to the university, out of the blue she told me that the father I know is not my real father, just my brother's. Turns out she had an affair and had me with another man while they were still together. I met the man once when I was 9. He randomly, but now I know, not so randomly, gave me a birthday gift after just meeting me. Turns out, he has a family of his own with I think 3 kids and a wife. They know nothing about me, and I want it to stay that way. My mother also told me that he sends us money every month for my expenses, but I have no idea what dear old mom does with it since she doesn't give me an allowance and my brother's biological dad pays for most of our bills. I cried for about an hour in the car after she told me, and all she said to me then was stop crying. It changes nothing. I didn't speak to her during the tour nor on the way home, and now she's continuing to act like nothing happened and everything's normal. My brother and father have no idea, and I still don't understand why she told me then or why she said anything at all. Not mine, but a friend from work told me this story. Her sister married this guy who turned out to be having about 3 affairs. When she gave birth to their first son, the guy's mistress also gave birth about 2 weeks after. The idiot decided to name both of his sons the same first name. They both shared his second name. So about 3 years later his wife goes to get the birth certificate for her son, and the lady in the office gives her the one which belongs to the mistress's son, which is how she found out about the whole situation. They're divorced now, and it turned out he guy has 11 children with 5 different women. Sort of. So growing up we would take trips to see my father's mom. I don't call her grandmum because she is a in Florida, and there was always this old man with her. I asked my dad if that was his dad and he said no, his dad died in WW2, and this old guy was her husband. I was about 8 at this time. Fast forward to 1995, I was 16 and we go to a family reunion, and I remember seeing my dad very angry and upset, but he didn't say anything that day. When we got back from the family reunion, I heard my mom and dad talking about what happened. Apparently my dad was talking to one of his distant relatives and said he wished he had a chance to know his dad before he died. Well, the relative said your dad isn't dead. I spoke to him last month, he lives in New Mexico. So my dad had asked if she would give him his phone number and she declined, but she said she would give him his address and my dad could write him a letter. If he got a response, great. If not, he had to promise to leave it alone. Well, my dad wrote his letter and few months later he received a phone call from his father. My dad was 38 years old and finally got to hear his father's voice. My dad booked a flight out to meet him the next day. My mom told my dad his dad died in WW2 and told my grandfather she had a miscarriage. So both of them never knew each other were alive. When my father's mom found out he had made contact with his dad, she became furious and didn't speak to our family for about 10 years. My dad asked me if I wanted to go to his mom's funeral and I declined. But I did go to his father's funeral 2 years ago because he was a good man and a great grandfather. Yeah, a question I can answer. My husband was having an affair with a friend of the family. I didn't know that the friend's youngest child was my husband's until he was 7 years old. I was his babysitter when he was an infant, and I discovered it through years of inconsistency that made me wonder, and I confronted him. Within a few months he came clean and left. It caused a lot of damage. We divorced and he married her. I later married the husband of my dreams. One that's faithful. Married 16 years now. There is life after misery. I had a friend in high school who started dating this girl that had the same last name as him. Turns out she was his half-sister and his dad was raising two families he kept secret from each other. Accidental incest. Yep. The worst part was that they were actually having sex. Found out my dad had a daughter after my parents divorced. I was an only child, and it happened when I was 2. When I was 18, looking at his tax return for college financial aid, it showed a girl's name as a dependent. I never asked him about it until a few years back when she contacted me on Facebook asking if I was her brother. Not me, but my friend's mom had a DNA test done and the results said she had a ton of siblings and cousins, which is weird because she had one brother, another adopted brother, and no cousins. Turns out her mom was having trouble getting pregnant, so she went to see some really well-renowned specialist and then became pregnant. But all this doctor did was take some of the husband's sperm and mix it with his own, and then they would get pregnant. So he fathered a ton of children, many of whom probably still don't know. OMG, something similar happened in the Netherlands. Via 23andMe or something, there kept popping up people who were related to the same guy, and when that dude turned out to be a fertility doctor, they went to check and he had fathered over 150 kids at least. Very disturbing.